I awoke slowly, lingering in that hazy state between sleep and wakefulness. As I began to realize my surroundings, I noticed the unfamiliar feel of stiff sheets, tightly encasing me, and the faint smell of mustiness in the air. Suddenly, I remembered where I was, in a tiny, dilapidated motel room, somewhere on Interstate 40. I sat up, wiping my sleep-dampened eyes and looking at the peeling wallpaper and threadbare carpet. Just a week ago, I had a comfortable bed in the two-bedroom apartment I shared with my boyfriend. Now all I had was this dingy room and an old backpack full of the most basic necessities. So quickly, everything had changed. Just a month ago, I had come home early from my job as a waitress at a diner, wanting to surprise my boyfriend Logan on their 3-year wedding anniversary. But the surprise ended up being me. The image of him in bed with my so-called best friend was seared into my consciousness. All my hopes and dreams for the future crumbled in an instant. After I kicked Logan out, the pitying looks and constant reminders of what happened became too much. I quit my job, packed my bags, and left my small hometown in the rearview mirror. I didn't know where I was going, I just knew I had to leave. Sitting alone in my motel room, I felt a familiar mixture of sadness, anger, and deep exhaustion overwhelm me. A tear rolled down my cheek, and I quickly brushed it away. "Pull yourself together, Ruby," I muttered to myself. Enough tears had been shed over this asshole. This was the beginning of a new chapter. At that moment, my cell phone rang loudly, making me jump. The caller ID showed it was my older sister, Anna. She had always been my rock in times of need. Taking a deep breath, I answered, "Hi, Anna." "Ruby. Thank goodness." "I was so worried about you, dear," Anna said gently. "How are you holding up?" "Fine," I lied. "I just needed to get out of town for a while. Clear my head, you know." Anna sighed. "I'm sorry, sweetheart, but running away won't make the pain go away. Let me know where you are. Maybe we can meet up, spend some time together." Her kindness made my throat constrict with excitement. I missed her so much already, but I knew I needed to make this solitary journey to begin the healing. "Thank you, Anna, but not yet. I'll let you know where I end up. Just, please don't worry too much. I need to sort myself out right now, but I'll be fine." Saying it out loud made me feel a little better, like it might be true. I can do this. I could rebuild myself and my life. All I needed was an open road full of promises. I woke up too early the next morning to the beeping of the alarm clock on my phone. I struggled to turn it off, squinting against the dim light shining through the dirty curtains. After taking a hot shower, which helped ease some of the fatigue from a night spent on the hard mattress, I packed my backpack and took one last look around the motel room. "No point in lingering in this dreary place," I muttered. I walked into the motel office to drop off my keys and noticed a bored teenager sitting at the front desk. "Hey, can you tell me how far away the next town is?" I asked. He sipped his gum disinterestedly. "I think it's about 60 miles to Waynesboro." I walked out to my dusty Honda Civic that I'd had since my high school days. As I turned on the ignition and drove out of the nearly empty parking lot, I contemplated my next steps. I had some money saved up from years of waitressing, but it couldn't last forever. I needed a plan. The gas station showed I had enough for at least those 60 miles. Waynesboro was the best place to start over. For now, I could get a job as a waitress again, and I could decide the rest later: where to live, how to move on, how to heal my broken heart. As I drove, I absent-mindedly fiddled with a strange old key I wore on a chain around my neck. It had belonged to my grandmother, who had died when I was 7 years old. Her name, Hope, was engraved on the tarnished surface. My mom had given it to me after I graduated from high school. "Fulfill your hopes," she said. I gripped the key tightly, making a silent promise to myself. I will live on my own. I would find a new life, new friends, new dreams. This was my path of hope. After about 2 hours, I saw the Waynesboro city limit sign ahead and sighed. I hadn't realized how stressed I was. "We made it," I said out loud to myself. As I drove past the sign, an old pickup truck whizzed dangerously close, beeping. My heart jumped, and I reflexively swerved to the side. "Asshole!" I shouted, staring after the receding truck. Getting my breathing under control again, I shook my head and drove on toward town. Time to find the local diner, the best place to look for help, wanted ads. This was my fresh start, and I was determined to make it a success. Where there is hope, there is a way. I opened the glass door, and the bells tied to the handle jingled, heralding my arrival. Inside was exactly as I expected: chrome countertops, vinyl booths, with cracked turquoise seats, the pervasive smell of fried food and coffee. Behind the counter, an older woman with curly gray hair looked up from the pitcher of water she was filling. "Sit anywhere you want," she called out in a husky voice. I chose a booth by the window overlooking the main street. The small town looked sleepy but charming. I knew that most of the residents were probably locals who had known each other all their lives. As an outsider, I doubted if I would ever feel at home here. When a waitress with a notepad in hand approached, ready to take my order, I cleared my throat nervously. "Actually, I noticed your help wanted sign in the window. Are you still looking for staff?" "Of course," she confirmed. "Our maid went to Florida last week to visit her sister. Left me to my own devices. Do you have any experience?" I nodded. "Yes, ma'am. I worked as a house waitress for 2 years. Well, aren't you a cutie? My name is Betty. I own this establishment with my husband Earl. Do you have a name?" "I'm Ruby." "Nice to meet you, Ruby. If you'd like, I can try you this afternoon. But keep in mind that things move fast around here at peak times. You'll have to be on your guard." I smiled, feeling a bubble of optimism rise in me. "That sounds great, thank you. What time should I be here?" Betty pressed her lips together, pondering. "How about 3 o'clock? You'll have time to get settled where you're staying." My face lowered slightly. With excitement, I'd forgotten that I didn't have anywhere to stay yet. Seeing my expression, Betty giggled. "Don't worry, honey. My sister Celia keeps the Sunrise Inn 2 blocks from here. Tell her Betty sent you to get a special price for the new waitress." I breathed a sigh of relief. That would be wonderful. "I really appreciate you giving me this opportunity, Betty. Don't mention it. Us girls have to stick together," she said, winking at me, and removed herself to check on the order. I grinned, encouraged by the friendly welcome. For the first time in weeks, I felt a sense of anticipation for the future. Sure, the city was unfamiliar and new challenges awaited me, but at least now I had a purpose again. A chance to move forward, and that gave me hope. The lunch rush was in full swing, the noise of filled booths and the sizzle of the grill engulfing me as I raced between tables. Just as Betty had warned me, the pace was non-stop. My notebook was nearly filled with orders, and my head was spinning trying to keep track of everything. I stopped at the kitchen window, wiping a trickle of sweat from my forehead. "Order up," shouted Earl, sliding 2 huge plates toward me. His stern look intimidated me at first, but then I realized there was a great softness underneath. I set the plates on their table and started to check on the other customers when the hanging bell rang again. I automatically looked up, expecting to see another hungry resident, but instead I froze in place. Standing in the doorway was a tall, raven-haired man I'd never seen before. His leather jacket was shabby, but it fit his wiry figure well. His guitar case was slung over his shoulder, and his blue eyes met mine instantly. The corner of his mouth lifted in a wry smile. Coming out of my daze, I grabbed the menu and hurried over to him. "Welcome. Booth or table?" I asked, panting slightly. "A booth is fine, sweetheart," he said, his voice a smooth baritone that sent shivers down my spine. He followed me into the corner booth, placing the guitar case on the seat next to him. "I'll have a coffee to start, please. Long day on the road." I poured his coffee, trying not to look at him too closely. "You're not from around here either, I take it?" He grinned, taking a sip. "What gave me away?" "I'm just passing through. But it looks like I made the right stop," he added with a wink. Embarrassed, I tried to hide my blush. "Well, I need to pick up the rest of my orders." As I turned around, he gently caught my wrist. Surprised, I turned around and met his steady gaze. "Maybe when you have some free time, you could join me for some music?" He nodded at the guitar case. "That is, if you have nothing better to do." My pulse quickened. He's leaving tomorrow, my brain reasoned, and I hardly knew him. But there was something electric about him that drew me in. Throwing caution to the wind, I said, "I'd love to," without even realizing it. His slow smile made my knees go weak. "Then, it's a date. My name is Damon, by the way." "Ruby," I whispered. What had I gotten myself into? And why did a part of me yearn to find out? After seeing Damon off with a glance, I headed to my tables, butterflies fluttering around me. I leaned against the brick facade of the diner, my shoulders slumped from hours of waiting tables. But I forgot about the fatigue, staring down the dark street, looking for any sign of Damon. He'd slipped away while I was busy with a large group, leaving me with instructions to meet him after my shift ended. I checked my watch again. It was already a few minutes past 10. All the way to the motel, I lectured myself silly. I don't even know him. But something about his easy confidence and the glint of adventurousness in his eyes made it hard to resist. Just as I was about to give up, a pair of headlights appeared ahead. Damon's motorcycle rumbled to a stop in front of me, his grin visible even in the shadows. "Hey, I was beginning to think you'd changed your mind," he said, holding out a spare helmet. "Sorry, I got held up by some late visitors. Had to talk Earl into letting me go a little early." I looked uncertainly at the rumbling motorcycle. "I've never actually ridden one of these. There's no better time than now." He settled easily into the leather seat. "Climb aboard, I don't bite." "Unless you ask me to," he added playfully. Laughing nervously, I strapped on my helmet and slid in behind him, placing my hands tentatively on his waist. He reached back and wrapped his arms around me tightly. "You have to hold on tighter now." In response, the engine roared louder and we flew, whizzing past on the dark roads. Startled, I clung to Damon as we pulled out of the city onto a moonlit country road. Gradually, I relaxed, resting my cheek against his. He smelled like coffee and leather, and something unique that I couldn't put a name to. Eventually, we slowed to a stop by a tranquil lake with stars glistening on its inky surface. Shutting off the engine, Damon jumped off and held out his hand to me. I climbed down on wobbly legs, dizzy with excitement and his proximity. Walking me to the shore, he pressed his hand warmly against my back and asked, "So how was your first motorcycle ride?" I turned to him, fully aware of how little space was left between us. "It was incredible, and maybe a little crazy. I hardly know you." I wanted to say that sounded accusatory, but there was more surprise than apprehension in my voice. His eyes crinkled at the corners. "Sometimes crazy makes life interesting." He picked up the guitar case. "Now, how about some music?" I bit my lip, but felt myself nodding, completely throwing caution aside. After all, I'd come looking for a fresh start, full of new experiences. And with Damon staring at me so intently, I wanted to know everything this chance encounter had to offer, even if it was just for one night.